wouldn't survive as a Psyker. They say every child cries when it leaves the womb, but Psyker children do not cry. They scream, not from hunger, not from cold, not even from fear. They scream because the warp is already inside them, pulling at their minds like hands gripping wet clay, twisting, reshaping, whispering. When you are born a Psyker in the Imperium of man, your first breath isn't air, it's terror. Most parents never speak of what happens next. They pretend their child is merely sensitive. They hide the nosebleeds, the migraines, the shadows that move without light, the whispers the boy or girl claims come from behind the walls, until the neighbors hear, until someone reports it, until the black ships come. But before all of that, long before the chains and blindfolds, there is the childhood. And childhood is where the horror begins. The first sign is always subtle. A toy shattering without being touched. A candle guttering when the child laughs. A dead pet found with its eyes melted. A sibling that sleepwalks into the fire and swears a friend guided them. Little things. Things the untrained mind cannot control. For Psykers are not born with power. They are born open. Their skulls are doors. Their minds are unshielded corridors. Every dream they dream leaks into the Imperium, and every nightmare of that realm leaks back. For most children, a nightmare ends when they wake. For Psyker children, a nightmare ends when the warp decides it ends. One survivor described it like this: I never knew which thoughts were mine. Some were warm, some were cold. Some felt like fingers running along the inside of my skull. By age 7, most Psykers begin to understand they are wrong. Not sick, not cursed, but wrong in the way a broken lock is wrong, or a wound that won't close. Their emotions are louder than other children's. Their grief spills into the warp like a scream. Their anger flickers like a beacon. Their joy is a flare that draws predators, and predators always come, in nightmares, in waking visions, in faces that stretch beneath the skin of loved ones, in whispers that pretend to be imaginary friends. Some Psykers describe a presence that watches them from the corners of rooms. Some see eyes behind mirrors. Some feel hands on their neck when they are alone. And some, the unlucky ones, begin answering the voices. Those children do not live long. Their parents find them babbling in unknown tongues, or tearing out their fingernails, or staring unblinking at a blank wall as if waiting for someone to walk through it. And sometimes, someone does. Psyker adolescence is a crucible, a mind still forming, still fragile, still learning the shape of itself, while the warp tries to take that shape for its own. When a normal child feels anger, it is a feeling. When a Psyker child feels anger, windows explode, chairs levitate, animals go feral, teachers collapse, clutching their heads, bleeding from eyes and ears, and the child doesn't understand why, because children do not understand consequences, and Psykers do not understand boundaries, not of their minds and not of reality. Most are terrified of themselves. Most beg to be normal. Most learn to fear sleep, because sleep is when the mind is weakest. Sleep is when the warp can whisper without interruption. Sleep is when the child's soul glows brightest, a candle in a void filled with hungry mouths, and every mouth wants a taste. Some children wake screaming, some do not wake at all. And then one day, the black ships come. The black ships never announce themselves. They simply appear, like omens, like funeral barges, like great iron vultures drifting through the void. Their arrival is never a celebration. Villages hide their children, planets barricade their homes, priests wail and ring bells, warning the populace that the tithe of souls is upon them. And the Psykers, young, trembling, confused, are rounded up like livestock, dragged from their families, bound, gagged, blindfolded, labeled with purity seals written by trembling clerics who dare not touch them. Even the guards who escort them keep their distance, because everyone knows a Psyker is not a child. A Psyker is a weapon waiting to misfire. They are loaded guns with beating hearts, and the Imperium needs bullets. They call the collection the walking pilgrimage. The Psykers march, chained together, toward a towering shuttle that reeks of machine oil and incense. Mothers cry. Fathers avert their eyes. Siblings hide behind their elders, pretending they do not feel relief that they were spared. No one stops it. No one even dares whisper protest, because the law is clear. A Psyker who is not claimed becomes a gateway, and gateways must be sealed or burned. As the shuttle door closes, the children look back one last time, hoping for a wave, a smile, anything. Most see only fear in the eyes of those they leave behind. And then the shuttle ascends, and the black ship swallows them. And the real suffering begins. Inside the black ships, Psykers are not people. They are cargo, numbered, inspected, sorted, examined for purity, measured for usefulness. Some cry for days, some lose their voices, some are silent from the moment they board. Already broken, already numb, already resigned to whatever fate awaits them. They sleep in rows of metal cells, each one cold, each one identical, each one designed to survive an explosion from the inside. Because sometimes the children burst, sometimes their nightmares become real, sometimes the warp finds its way in, sometimes one mind cracks and a demon steps through. When that happens, alarms shriek, incinerators roar, bulkheads seal, and the entire wing is purged. Dozens die to contain one. The children learn quickly. Your value is measured by how well you can keep the warp out. And the warp never stays out. Some Psykers sleep with their hands over their ears, trying to muffle the voices that come from inside their own thoughts. Others scratch prayers into the metal floor, hoping the Emperor hears them. Some go catatonic, some go feral, some go mad. A few survive and remain sane. A very few. Those few are taken deeper into the ship, toward training, indoctrination, and judgment. The unlucky ones are taken elsewhere, to the Golden Throne, to be fuel, to be consumed, to be forgotten. Because Psykers are not citizens, not soldiers, not even slaves. In the Imperium of man, they are something simpler, something colder, something truer. They are cattle, and the Emperor is hungry. They tell you the journey to terror is measured in light years. That is a lie. The journey is measured in screams. The black ship doesn't move like other vessels. It does not roar with proud engines, does not hum with the chatter of crew and the banter of officers. It groans. The Geller field is pushed to its limit, forced to shield not just a ship, but a cargo bay packed with hundreds, thousands of living beacons. Each Psyker is a hole in the world, and the warp presses its face to everyone. Reality buckles. Sometimes the lights flicker and never come back. Sometimes the gravity twists sideways for a heartbeat and leaves bones broken in the confusion. Sometimes everyone in a corridor hears the same voice whisper their name in a language no one knows. And always, always, the children dream. They do not dream alone. In one cell, a girl whimpers as she sleeps. She is 11 years old. On her world, she used to make flowers bloom when she sang. Her mother called it a blessing. Here, it is a crime. Her dream begins simply. A field, warm sunlight, her mother's voice. Then the sky cracks. Hands crawl out of the fracture. Too many joints, too many fingers. They peel the sun away like rotting cloth. The girl tries to wake. She cannot. Something notices her, something vast without eyes, but she can feel it looking. Its attention is pain. Her skull feels transparent. Her thoughts feel like pages in a book being thumbed through far too quickly. It tastes her joy first, then her fear, then her love for her mother. It likes that part. She wakes with blood in her mouth and doesn't remember why. Down the hall, a boy laughs in his sleep. He wakes with a broken jaw. The black ships are not staffed by optimists. The crew know what they're carrying. They walk with purity seals trailing from their arms, rosaries clicking against flak armor, vox beads whispering constant litanies. Some wear earplugs not for sound, but to muffle the soft psychostatic words that occasionally leak into comms channels. The navigators hate these ships most of all. Guiding a vessel through the warp is difficult on the best of days. Steering by the Astronomicon, avoiding currents of thought and tides of unreality, guiding a vessel stuffed with screaming psychic antennas, is like trying to sail through a storm of knives. Each mind is a flare, each fear a thunderclap, each breakdown a lightning strike. Sometimes a Psyker breaks at the wrong moment. Sometimes the navigator screams. Sometimes the ship turns toward the scream. Those are the journeys no one talks about. The ones where the black ship never reaches terror. The ones where the hull turns inside out and the engines start breathing and snatches of hymnals echo from rooms that don't exist. The Imperium recalls those losses as warp mishap, a sterile box on a parchment, a statistical inevitability. It does not record the faces. Psykers are not all equal. Even in chains, hierarchy asserts itself. At the bottom are the broken ones, the ones who hear voices constantly and do nothing but drool or mutter, the ones whose eyes see behind things, the ones who giggle when the lights go out. They don't survive long. Near the middle are the frightened ones. They cling to memory, of family, of home, of names. They pray. They flinch at every bulkhead groan. They bargain with saints. Those are the ones the black ship is built to test. At the top are the quiet ones, the ones who sit still, who speak rarely, who watch. They don't look impressive. Some are thin and pale. Some are scarred. Some have dead eyes. But when one of the other Psykers starts screaming, these quiet ones don't flinch. They tilt their heads. Listen. Sometimes they whisper something back, and the screaming stops. These are the valuable ones. These are the ones terror is waiting for. Eventually, the journey ends. You can always tell when you are nearing terror, even without sensors. The warp noise lessens. The ship's metal stops twitching under your hands. The whispers grow, quieter. Then something else replaces them. A pressure, a weight, a single immense presence pressing down on every mind on board, like a hand resting on the top of a child's head. The Emperor's shadow. The astropaths say they feel only the Astronomicon, the great psychic lighthouse shining from the golden throne. But Psykers feel more. They feel attention, like someone far away, impossibly far, has paused for just a heartbeat to glance in their direction. For some, that moment is like drowning in light. They fall to their knees and sob with relief. For others, it is terror. To be seen so completely, with nowhere to hide, no thoughts private, no secrets safe. Some snap right then. The black ship's crew deals with those quickly. The Imperium does not like loose ends. When the black ship finally makes orbit around Terra, no one cheers. The children are thinner now. Some of them stare at walls. Some rock back and forth. Some have stopped blinking unless reminded. They are herded out of their cells, shackles clanking, blindfolds back in place. Not for mercy. There is none of that aboard these vessels, but for control. Psykers see too much. Terror must not be seen by such eyes until it is ready to look back. They move in lines down echoing corridors, guided by prods and shouts, chants and gun butts. The air grows hotter, thicker, scented with incense and chemical cleansers. And then they leave the ship. They do not see the palace. They do not see the endless hive of humanity packed around it. They smell smoke, hear the tolling of bells, feel the screech of metal under their boots. They are driven into the dark. The first thing terror takes from a Psyker is their name. In the depths beneath the palace, in caverns carved by forgotten hands, they are sorted. Not by family, not by world, not by language, by potential. They are lined up in pens like livestock. Serfs with data slates move down the rows, scanners buzzing as they take readings. Soul patterns, warp resonance, mental stability. Each child gets a sigil burned into their collar or forehead. Letters, numbers, codes, a designation, an assessment, a sentence. The lowest codes are marked for quiet, clean death. They are too unstable, too open, too loud. These are for the throne. They will never see the sky again. The middling codes are marked for training. Sanctioned psychers, astropaths, choirs, battle psychers, tools, if they survive. The highest codes. Those are rare, inquisitorial material, potentially, or something stranger. Something only the darkest chambers of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica whisper about. Most never learn what their symbols mean. They learn only that the brand hurts. Selection for the Golden Throne is not a ceremony. It is a logistics process. A clerk in a lower administratum vault receives a request. X thousand psychers required for throne sustenance, classified levels Y and Z to be delivered within solar week. Forms are stamped. Orders are transmitted. Guards are assembled. Somewhere deep below, a new line of children is formed. The Emperor's cattle. They are marched in silence. No hymns, no fanfare. There is nothing glorious about being burned alive to keep a corpse dreaming. They pass through doors thick enough to stop a Titan shell. Through chambers where air tastes like iron and old prayers. Past silent sisters whose null presence makes their heads ache. Most of them are crying by then. Not because they know what awaits, but because they feel something ahead of them. A vast golden gravity dragging at their souls. The closer they get, the more they shake. One collapses. A guard shoots them in the head without breaking stride. The line steps over the body. The throne is hungry. They do not see it. Even here, even now, the Emperor is protected by ritual and distance. The Psychers are led instead to side chambers. Rows of machines and altars, caskets of iron and brass, stasis pods with restraints built in. They are plugged in. Electrodes on their shaved scalps, IV lines in their arms, purity seals slapped across their chests as if parchment can hide terror from a god. Some scream, begging to be spared. Some pray incoherently. Some go very quiet, as if already halfway into whatever comes next. Then, somewhere, a switch is thrown. You'd expect it to be dramatic. It isn't. Their hearts do not explode. They are not burned to ash in an instant. It is slower, more careful, more precise. Their souls are tapped, like veins being opened, like casks being drained. The Emperor's will reaches out along the conduits, a vast impersonal hunger, and drinks. From ship to ship across the galaxy, navigators gasp as the Astronomicon flares brighter. For a moment, every captain in the Imperium breathes easier. Somewhere far away, An Imperial world is spared being lost in the warp. Down here, under a mountain of stone and worship, thousands of Psykers die by inches. Their fear is converted into light, their pain into guidance, their lives into a beacon. No one writes their names. No one builds statues. At best, someone murmurs, "The Emperor protects," as if that word still applies to those he personally devours. There is a word you hear sometimes, whispered by the bitter and the drunk. Tithe. Grain is tithed. Ore is tithed. Men are tithed for war. Psykers are tithed for the throne. On some worlds, they call themselves blessed to be chosen. Priests tell their families that their sacrifice is the highest honor, to be closer to the Emperor than any living saint. But the Psykers know better. They feel the wires in their veins. They feel their minds fraying. They feel their thoughts thinning out like smoke. One of the last things many of them ever feel is regret. Not for their deaths, for their births, for being born wrong, born loud, born bright in a universe that punishes any light that is not sanctioned. Of all the horrors of being born a Psyker, this is the worst. It isn't an accident. The warp didn't do this alone. The gods of chaos did not design this fate. We did. Humanity, the Imperium, the bureaucracy that grinds flesh into fuel and calls it divine necessity. We made a galaxy where children are fed to an undead monarch so that starships don't lose their way. And we will keep doing it, again and again, because the alternative is unthinkable. No Astronomicon, no guidance, no unity, only isolation, only darkness, only a slow, hungry death for 1 trillion worlds. So we tithe the Psykers. We brand them, we break them, we burn them, and we tell ourselves, it is mercy, it is needed, it is holy. But if you look into their eyes, as the life drains out of them, as their souls are dragged screaming into a golden machine, you'll see the truth. They are not saints. They are not martyrs. They are cattle, the Emperor's cattle. And the horror of being born a Psyker is knowing that everyone else will call this justice. They say the training of a Psyker is meant to save them. That is the first lie. Training does not protect the child. It protects the Imperium from the child. After sorting, after branding, after the weakest have been fed to the throne, the remaining Psykers are marched deeper into the catacombs beneath the Imperial Palace, to a place called the Scholastia Psychna. The children think they are about to learn control. What they learn instead is obedience. The first lesson is silence. Not meditation, not calm, not serenity. Actual silence. A silent sister stands before them. Tall, alabaster, shaven-headed, eyes like bottomless wells of non-existence. When she steps into the chamber, half the children collapse screaming, because a null is not absence. A null is subtraction. Her presence erases the warp around her. To a normal human, she feels unsettling. To a Psyker, she feels like drowning in vacuum. Most Psykers experience the warp the way a fish experiences water. Constantly, unconsciously, aware of currents and ripples without needing to think. A null feels like being thrown onto dry land while your lungs are still full of water. Some children clutch their heads, others retch, a few suffer seizures. The silent sister simply watches. Her presence is the lesson. Your powers are not your own. They can be taken, they can be crushed, you can be unmade. Psykers do not forget that feeling. They live in terror of it. The second lesson is pain. It begins on the second day. The children are marched into a chamber filled with burning incense and chained to metal thrones, arranged in perfect lines. Electrodes are connected to their backs, their temples, their spines. No explanation, no reassurance. A tech priest chants in Binharik. Someone pulls a lever. The thrones light up. The first time, The children scream. The second time, they scream louder. The pain is not physical alone. It is psychic. A forced opening of the mind, a wrenching apart of the barriers they instinctively built to survive. It is meant to shatter them and to rebuild what remains in shapes the Imperium finds useful. The instructors tell them, pain teaches discipline. Pain cleanses. Pain breaks the connection between emotion and power. But the Psykers know the real purpose. Pain makes them afraid to use their abilities without permission. Pain teaches them their own minds are weapons, and the Imperium holds the safety switch. The third lesson is the litany of control. Every child must learn it by heart. It is drilled into them between shocks, between sessions of psychic overloading, between hours of sitting silent in the oppressive aura of a null. They chant it before sleep, after meals, before tests, after outbursts. Many whisper it in their dreams without knowing. The litany is not prayer, it is programming. I am the gate, I am the lock, the warp knocks, I refuse it. I am the vessel, I am the seal, the warp calls, I deny it. I am the candle, I am the flame, the warp hungers, I starve it. Children who fail to recite it perfectly are dragged out of line and replaced by others. No explanation is given. The missing are never mentioned again. Their thrones remain empty the next day. The fourth lesson is death. It happens suddenly, always unannounced. A child somewhere in the chamber twitches unnaturally. A candle sputters. Ink swirls in impossible patterns. Then the screaming starts. When a Psyker fails, it is not subtle. Their mind cracks open like a thermal grenade. The warp rushes in, a tidal wave of unreality with teeth. Instructors shout orders, sirens blare. The nulls advance in eerie silent formation. The children watch their classmate thrash, levitate, twist in contorted agony. Sometimes the body bursts like rotten fruit. Sometimes something crawls out. Sometimes the child begs for help in a voice that is not their own. The sisters do not hesitate. They move like executioners, fast, precise, ruthless. One touch of a null's hand and the demon shrivels, the air snaps back to normal, and the child collapses into a heap of bone and blood. Then the body is dragged away. The instructors say only one thing. Failure is contamination. The children repeat it back, shaking, and the training continues. By the end of their first year, fewer than half of the Psykers remain. By the end of the second, fewer than a quarter. Those who survive are no longer children. Their eyes are hollow, their thoughts quiet, their emotions smoothed into flat monotony. They've learned not to laugh, not to cry, not to dream loudly, not to feel anything that might attract attention from demons or instructors. They've learned that the warp listens, and listening is danger. They've learned that joy is indulgence, and indulgence is death. They've learned that the Imperium does not love them. The Imperium fears them, and fear drives cruelty. Eventually, they are tested, not the little tests, not the recitations or the pain thresholds or the control drills. The real test, the one that decides their future. It takes place in a chamber shaped like a cathedral nave, with stained glass windows depicting saints, burning witches, and angels standing triumphant over horn silhouettes. The children stand in a row, strapped into their restraining thrones. Electrodes hum. Instructors murmur. A null stands beside each one. The last instructor steps forward. His armor is black. His helm is marked with a skull. An inquisitorial rosette hangs like a threat from his gorget. "You will open your minds," he says. "You will let the warp brush against you. You will show us you can endure." One child whispers, trembling, "What if we can't?" The instructor walks to them calmly and places a hand on their head. He snaps their neck with one twist. His voice never rises. Then you were never meant to live. He returns to the front. Begin. The warp rushes in. A whisper. A hurricane. 1,000 voices. A single scream. A promise. A lie. A memory that isn't yours. A desire that isn't human. Some children convulse. Some beg. Some try to shut their minds. But that is the point. There is no shutting out the warp, only mastering how deep it cuts. The nulls stand ready, hands hovering, silence radiating. One child opens too far. Their veins glow, their skin cracks, their mouth stretches too wide. A null touches them. The child ceases to exist. Another survives the opening, but sobs uncontrollably, their mind unable to process the psychic noise. They are dragged away. Another child, a pale girl with shaking hands, doesn't scream at all. Her pupils dilate, her breath steadies, and something inside her sings. She stays. The Inquisitor nods. Useful. Those who pass become sanctioned psychers. Those who fail are erased. Those who resist are purged. And the Imperium rolls on, fed by the minds of its most vulnerable, protected by the suffering of children born too bright for a universe that hates light. When the tests end, the survivors are given new robes, new names, and new chains. Some will serve on battlefields, their minds used as weapons until they burn out. Some will serve on starships, guiding astropaths until their brains liquefy. Some will serve Inquisitors, used as disposable tools. The first into danger, the first to die. A very few are never seen again. Those are the ones who go deeper, below even the throne, to chambers where no records exist. Psychers who are too powerful, too dangerous, too valuable. The Imperium has many uses for minds that can hear the warp's heartbeat without flinching. But every psyker, no matter their path, carries the same truth. They survive training, but they will not survive service. No psyker dies peacefully. They burn, they break, they are consumed, and that is the best they can hope for. Because the horror of being born a psyker is not the black ship, nor the training, nor the throne. It is knowing that every day you live is a day the Imperium hasn't needed you yet. They like to pretend that once a psyker survives training, once they earn the robes and the sanctioning brand, their suffering becomes service. As if suffering becomes noble when the Inquisition approves of it. As if trauma becomes holy when the ecclesiarchy writes a sermon about it. But here is the truth every psyker learns the moment their training ends. Graduation isn't freedom, it's conscription. And conscription for a psyker does not mean enlistment, it means ownership. The first thing they give you after sanctioning is not a blessing, not a room, not a weapon. They give you a handler. You don't call them a handler. The Imperium has gentler words for its cruelties. Warden, supervisor, custodian, binder. But you know what they are. You learn quickly. Your handler knows your schedule, your limits, your fears, your triggers, your feeding times, your sleeping cycle, the intensity of your headaches, the moments your nose bleeds, the signs you're about to lose control. They study you the way a farmer studies a dangerous animal, not because they hate you, because they must. The Imperium cannot allow psychers to be people. People have choices, people feel, people rebel. Psychers must not. So your handler becomes your first, and perhaps only, constant companion. You never walk alone. You are not allowed to. Even in private, even during medical examinations, even during sleep, there is always a presence nearby, always a voice in your ear, always a shadow watching your breathing. Some handlers are kind, some are cruel, most are tired, but all of them are afraid. Not afraid of you as a person, afraid of what your death might release, afraid of what your sorrow might attract, afraid of what your nightmares might birth. You learn that your handler doesn't guard you. They guard the galaxy from you. The second thing they give you is a task. Your entire existence is reduced to function. You might be classified as a telepath, a pyromancer, a biomancer, a prognosticator, a diviner, a sanctioned battle mystic, an astropath, a choir anchor, a word vein, a soulbound, an oracle, a warp sensory node. You don't choose, you are chosen. Your abilities define your future more than your will ever could. If your mind naturally reaches outward, if whispers from across the cosmic dark leak into your thoughts, you go to the Black Tower to become an astropath. If your mind lashes outward in reflexive panic, igniting candles, melting steel, you are sent to the pyroclast clusters, where every lesson smells of burnt flesh. If your dreams come true too often, if your visions predict the deaths of strangers, you are taken by the Ordo Chronos, never to be seen again. And if your soul shines too brightly, if you are too stable, too strong, too promising, you are taken down to the lower vaults of the palace to become part of the Emperor's silent choir, a fate worse than death, though few ever understand why. The third thing they give you is a number, not a name. Sanctioned Psykers lose their old names the moment they survive the warp opening test. Names imply identity. Identity implies self. Self implies unpredictability. So you become Subject Theta 19, Asset A203, Soul Candidate 7, Wired Batch Sigma 42. Your handler uses your number. Your instructors use your number. The administratum uses your number. Only astropaths sometimes keep their birth names, but only because the ritual that binds them to the Emperor burns everything else away. You would think Psykers would mourn their names. Some do, but most are simply relieved to be alive. Names don't matter when every heartbeat feels like borrowed time. After sanctioning, they send you out into the galaxy, not because you are ready, because you are needed. And nothing in the Imperium is ever ready. Everything is simply required. Some Psykers are deployed to the Guard. Guardsmen fear them. Officers tolerate them. Commissars watch them with hands on holsters. Psykers in the Guard sleep in cells, not bunks. Their meals are examined. Their dreams are monitored. Their footsteps echo in empty barracks because they never walk among the others. They go into battle at the front lines, not behind cover, because if a Psyker dies in close combat, it is better than what happens if they die afraid. The warp reacts to fear, and Psykers die terrified. On the battlefield, a Psyker hears everything. The ambient dread of dying men, the last thoughts of the mortally wounded, the silent screams of those who don't know they're dead yet, the warp perfume of demons hiding behind thin walls of reality, and above all, the Emperor's name repeated in prayer as thousands die. Their minds become a choir, and the Psyker stands at the center of it, unable to block out any single voice. It never ends, even when the battle ends, especially then, because silence gives the warp more room to speak. Some Psykers are taken by the Navy. You might think void service would be safer. It is not. Psykers on starships serve as human sensors, alerting commanders to anomalies, shadows, psychic ripples, warp interference. Their minds become part of the ship's nervous system. Their nightmares become warnings. Their pain becomes data. Space is quiet, but the warp is loud. And the warp is always pressing against the Geller field, scratching at the psychic minds on board. Psykers hear the scratching, even when the walls hold. even when everything is fine, especially when it's fine, because quiet scratching means something is patient. Some Psykers are chosen by the Inquisition. The lucky ones serve the Ordo Xenos. The unlucky ones serve the Ordo Malleus. The terrified ones serve the Ordo Hereticus. A Psyker working under an Inquisitor lives with a simple truth. Every mission is a test. Every mistake is treason. And the moment you fail, even once, even slightly, even by accident, you will not die alone. Your escort will kill you before the demon has time to claim your soul, and they will thank you for giving them the chance to protect humanity from your failure. The Inquisition does not waste Psyker corpses. They become fuel, offerings, warnings. A few, a very rare few, are taken deeper than the rest. These Psykers never see the sky again, never feel sunlight, never breathe unfiltered air. They are chained to golden pylons in vaults beneath the throne. Not prisoners, not criminals. Batteries. Human bodies holding back the Imperium by sacrificing their sanity hour by hour, year by year, lifetime by lifetime. They die young, or old, or sometimes they don't die at all, not in any way that matters. Their minds dissolve slowly, feeding the Astronomicon, feeding the Emperor, feeding the Imperium. Their bodies remain chained in place long after their thoughts have turned to ash. And every Psyker in the galaxy knows, if your powers are too strong, too pure, too bright, you will end up below, where the light never reaches except to burn you away. There is one last truth every Psyker learns, whether they serve a guard regiment, a rogue trader, an inquisitor, or a throne room choir. Psykers do not retire. They do not live long lives. They do not settle down. They do not grow old gracefully. They do not find peace. Their story always ends the same way. Overload, possession, implosion, corruption, burnout, sacrifice, execution, ascension, consumption, feeding, breaking, unmaking. Every Psyker dies violently. Every Psyker dies in fear. And the Imperium calls it necessary, because to the Imperium, Psykers are not citizens, not people, not even soldiers. They are cattle, raised, branded, consumed, disposed of, all to keep the corpse of a god burning just one more night. In the end, the greatest horror of being born a Psyker is not the warp, not the demons, not the training, not the fear. It is realizing that the galaxy needs your death more than it ever needed your life. There is a myth the Imperium likes to tell, not to outsiders, not to citizens, not even to soldiers. It is a myth told only to Psykers, whispered in training halls, murmured by handlers, echoed by instructors, hissed by the Black Ship's wardens. The myth goes like this: if you are good enough, if you are strong enough, if you are loyal enough, you will survive. Psykers cling to this myth because the alternative is too horrifying to contemplate. But once you've lived long enough, you begin to see the cracks. You begin to understand. It is not a myth. It is a lie. A lie told not out of malice, but out of grim necessity. Because without hope, even false hope, even Psykers would break. Most Psykers die before they ever leave Terra. But those who do, those few who step onto a transport ship wearing sanctioned robes, believe they have achieved the impossible. They believe they are free. Of course they are not. Freedom requires two things: choice and safety. Psykers have neither. Still, those first days of service feel like liberation. The air is cleaner, the rooms are larger, the voices in the walls are quieter. The presence of nulls is no longer suffocating. The guards speak to them with civility. The handlers use more gentle tones. The instructors no longer drag them away for minor mistakes. It feels like progress. It feels like survival. But Psykers learn quickly that the Imperium only treats them kindly when it needs them desperately. And the Imperium always needs Psykers desperately. The first true shock Psykers experience after sanctioning is the realization that their suffering is not unique. Every Psyker thinks their training was the worst imaginable, that their pain was special, that their torment was extreme. But then you see battlefields, hive worlds, penal colonies, warp storms, and you realize the galaxy is full of pain, full of suffering, full of cruelty so vast the warp itself feeds on it. You are not special, you are simply useful. The scale of human misery dwarfs your own story. That, more than anything else, breaks Psykers. Because suddenly, their agony no longer feels personal. It feels industrial, mass-produced, a part of the machinery of survival. The first battlefield a Psyker sees is always the same. Chaos. Not chaos with a capital C. Not the ruinous powers. Not demons manifesting in screaming vortices. Not cults ripping out throats in names they barely understand. No, the other kind of chaos. The human kind. The kind that smells like mud and blood, like fear and gunpowder, like bodies rotting in trenches and prayers whispered by men who know they won't see tomorrow. The kind that breaks minds even without the touch of the warp. And this is where Psykers learn their next great truth. The warp is not the source of suffering. It is the reflection of it. Every terror, every atrocity, every scream on that battlefield echoes into the Imperium. Psykers hear all of it. They hear the last thoughts of dying soldiers, the rage of desperate officers, the prayers of men who know their God is silent, the despair of civilians used as shields, the fury of commissars forced to kill their own. Every emotion becomes a psychic blade in the Psyker's skull. And if they falter, if they flinch, if they lose focus for even a moment, the warp floods in. A moment's weakness becomes a lifetime of consequences, because the warp is always hungry, and Psykers are always food. Eventually, Psykers learn something else, that the Imperium depends on their suffering more than on their success. A Psyker who dies in service is considered heroic. A Psyker who loses control is considered dangerous. A Psyker who survives too long is considered suspicious. Longevity in Psyker service is not a sign of strength. It is a sign of instability, because every year a Psyker lives means another year exposed to the Imperium, another year of temptation, another year of whispers, another year of slow erosion, another year of corruption. Even sanctioned Psykers become dangerous simply by existing too long. Handlers know this. Inquisitors know this. Commissars know this. The Psykers themselves know this. So when a Psyker feels themselves beginning to slip, when they feel the warp pulling at their edges, they do not speak up. They do not ask for help. They hide it. Because to admit weakness is to sign their own death warrant. And death is guaranteed. Not immediate, not swift, not clean, but certain. This certainty shapes every breath they take. The warp whispers constantly to Psykers. Not loudly, not always violently, not always through demons. Sometimes the whispers sound like yourself. Your own voice telling you truths you shouldn't hear. Sometimes they sound like memories. Your mother's lullaby. Your father's last embrace, your name before the sanctioning burned it away. Sometimes they sound like comfort. You are not alone. You can rest now. You deserve peace. Those whispers kill more Psykers than any demon ever has, because the warp does not only tempt with power, it tempts with tenderness, with understanding, with the illusion of empathy. Psykers, starved of comfort since childhood, are incredibly vulnerable to those illusions. They cling to them, They crave them, they drown in them, and when they finally break, when they finally reach for that imagined comfort, the warp snaps shut like a bear trap, and another Psyker becomes a tragedy, another battlefield hazard, another crater, another cautionary tale. But the greatest horror, the one Psykers only ever speak of to each other, in hushed tones, in quiet places, when handlers are absent and the candles are low. The worst truth is this: the warp does not hate Psykers. The warp loves them, because Psykers are bridges, Psykers are doors, Psykers are keys. The warp needs them the same way a parasite needs a host. Psykers are the galaxy's greatest victims, and the warp's favorite toys. The Imperium treats Psykers like cattle. The warp treats them like beloved pets, and in both cases, they are owned, never free, never safe, never whole. Some Psykers embrace despair, some cling to discipline, some pray, some stop praying because they know no one listens. Some go numb, some live in terror, some pretend they are normal because the alternative is madness. But all Psykers share one secret. No matter how strong they seem, no matter how disciplined, no matter how devoted, no matter how stable, they are afraid. Every day, every moment, every breath. Afraid of losing control, afraid of breaking, afraid of becoming a monster, afraid of being executed by their own allies, afraid of dying alone in the warp. Psykers are the most afraid people in the galaxy, and that is why they are the most dangerous, because fear shapes the warp, and the warp shapes everything. There is a moment every Psyker remembers, not their birth, not their branding, not even the black ships. It is the moment they realize what they truly are, not weapons, not resources, not servants of the Emperor, but accidents, aberrations of biology and fate, fault lines in the soul, cracks where the warp leaks into the Imperium. It happens differently for each Psyker, but the revelation always arrives. For some, it comes on the battlefield. Kneeling in a crater, their squad mates burned into shadows on stone, their own hands dripping with molten armor, wondering why they are still alive when everyone around them is not. For others, it happens quietly. A whisper in an empty room, a shadow moving without light, a dream that feels like a memory of someone else's life in a world that should not exist. And for some, it comes in a single sentence, spoken by someone they trust. You are dangerous even when you mean well. That is the moment when most Psykers break, not from fear, but from understanding. Understanding that they can never be trusted. Not by others, not by the Imperium, not even by themselves. Sanctioned Psykers learn quickly that survival is not measured in power, not even in loyalty. Survival is measured in control, and control is a limited resource. There is a cost to every power used. A whisper of telepathy might strain the mind. A flare of pyromancy might blister the soul. A prophecy might steal a piece of memory that will never return. A sanctioned Psyker who pushes too far doesn't explode spectacularly, doesn't erupt in holy fire, doesn't ascend into a demon prince of glory. No. Most sanctioned Psykers die quietly. A nosebleed that won't stop. A headache that becomes a seizure. A mind that simply dissolves. A heartbeat that fails after one too many psychic surges. There is no honor in these deaths, no ceremony, no remembrance. Handlers write it off as exhaustion. Inquisitors call it acceptable attrition. Commanders file it as combat loss. Priests whisper that the Emperor has reclaimed his due. But Psykers know the truth. They died because their soul finally wore out. And every sanctioned Psyker lives with the knowledge that one day their own soul will do the same. The greatest irony of their existence is that Psykers are both indispensable and disposable. Without Psykers, the Imperium collapses. No communication, no warp travel, no Astronomicon, no Imperial command structure, no defenses against demons. The Imperium needs Psykers desperately, and yet every part of the Imperium fears them. Guardsmen flinch when a sanctioned Psyker walks by. Pilots avoid eye contact. Tech priests make the sign of the cog in reflex. Chaplains mutter protective psalms under their breath. Even the Inquisition, which relies on Psykers more than any other faction, treats them like ticking bombs, which, to be fair, they are. The result is a kind of hatred that Psykers feel everywhere they go. Not hatred born of anger, hatred born of fear. Fear that they might lose control. Fear that something might be looking through their eyes. Fear that a demon might be hiding in their skull. Fear that the warp might spill out of them and consume everything nearby. It is a lonely existence, a paranoid existence, a life lived under constant suspicion. And yet, most Psykers do not resent humanity. Most Psykers do not hate the Imperium. Most Psykers simply wish they had been born normal, that they could have been farmers, or miners, or scribes, or soldiers, or anything else that dies without endangering the galaxy. There is a saying among veteran Psykers, the kind whispered only in dark corners, far from handlers and servitors. The mind is a battlefield, and we are both sides. Every day a Psyker wakes up, they are walking into war. The warp tests them constantly. It tries to erode their sense of self, to tempt them with visions of a world where they are not alone, to whisper promises of power, comfort, release. Some Psykers resist by discipline, others by faith, others by sheer stubbornness or the memory of someone they lost or the echo of a childhood dream before the black ships came. But no one wins forever. The warp never stops. The warp never sleeps. The warp never grows tired. The warp is patient. It can wait years, decades, lifetimes. And eventually, every Psyker cracks. Some cracks are small, barely noticeable. A twitch, a stray thought, an outburst of power, a fleeting hallucination. Others are catastrophic, an implosion, a scream that warps reality, a rift torn open by accident, an entire squad or ship lost because one Psyker had one moment of weakness. This is why Psykers are watched. This is why Psykers are feared. This is why Psykers die young. The Imperium knows they cannot withstand the warp forever, so the Imperium uses them until the breaking point. And when they break, no one mourns. But here is the darkest truth Psykers learn. They do not fear demons. They fear becoming one. They fear the moment their minds unravel and the thing that steps into their skin looks like them, speaks like them, uses their memories, wears their voice like a mask, but is not them. And the warp does not need a portal. It only needs a thought. A single stray moment of doubt or desire is enough. That is the terror. That is the horror. Not possession, not explosion, not being fed to the throne. The horror is self-loss. The horror is waking up one day and realizing the voice in your head is not yours, and never was. Some Psykers write journals, small ones, hidden under bunks or inside Vox casings, not because it's allowed, it isn't, but because writing is the only way to remind themselves of who they are. Most entries are short. I held today. I didn't hear the whispers for an hour. I remembered my mother's face. I think I am still me. Others are desperate. It is getting louder. I don't know where I end. I think something is looking through my eyes. I'm afraid I'm not afraid anymore. And some are just one line. Please let me die before I change. These journals never survive long. Handlers confiscate them. Inquisitors burn them. Chaplains declare them heretical. But Psykers write them anyway, not to defy the Imperium, but to leave something behind, something to prove they were once human, before the warp took everything. Psykers know they will die, not someday, soon. Their only real question is how, burning out on a battlefield, bleeding from eyes and ears, aboard a void ship, shot in the head by a commissar, disintegrated by a null's touch, consumed by the throne, possessed beyond recovery, or something worse. Something nameless and hungry that strips their soul from their flesh before anyone can save them. There is no retirement, no sanctuary, no peace. Every Psyker dies afraid, because Psykers understand something no one else in the galaxy does. Death is not the end. Death is the beginning of something much, much worse. There is one more lie the Imperium tells about Psykers. It says they break because they are weak, because they lacked discipline, because they lacked faith, because they lacked courage. But you've heard enough now to know the truth. Psykers don't break because they are weak. They break because they are asked to carry what no mind was built to bear. Let me show you. He has no name anymore, only a designation. Sanctioned Battle Psyker, attached to the 88th Harrogate Rifles. Asset code Theta 19. Soul purity index acceptable. Corruption risk elevated but controllable. Recommended handler presence constant. To his regiment he is witch, spook, seer, it. To his handler he is subject. To the commissar he is liability. To the enemy he is priority target. To himself, most days he is tired. He looks like any other underfed, overworked human in a war zone. Robed instead of flak armored, eyes shadowed by insomnia, veins dark under too pale skin, fingers stained with old ink and dried blood. The 88th is fighting on a world whose name no one bothers to remember. Another hive, another rebellion, another crusade of pacification that looks exactly like the last. The air tastes like ash. The sky is the color of dried bruises. The city is a maze of broken hab blocks and industrial towers all covered in the same three things: soot, propaganda, and blood. The enemy here is not Xenos, not demons, not even obvious heretics, just humans. Humans with wrong ideas. Humans with stolen weapons. Humans who believe someone other than the Imperium could save them. The 88th was sent to correct that mistake. Our Psyker marches with them, not in the middle of the column, not at the rear, at the front, always at the front. Because if the warp is going to bite through the thin skin of reality, it will bite where he stands. His handler walks half a pace behind him, hand on the holster, safety off. Not because he expects betrayal, because he expects failure. There is a difference. They are clearing a lower hive level when it happens. The Vox is a mess of screams and static. The Auspex is blind. There's something wrong with the lights. They flicker in patterns too regular to be random, too chaotic to be coded. The Colonel doesn't trust things he can't shoot. He turns to Theta 19. Report, witch. The Psyker closes his eyes. He doesn't want to. He never wants to. Every time he opens his mind, it gets harder to close it again. He reaches out. He feels the fear of the regiment behind him, sharp and metallic, like blood on a knife. The hatred of the rebels ahead, hot and ragged, like torn lungs. The weight of the hive pressing down on everything. Millions of souls packed into towers, stacked like crates in a warehouse of flesh. And beneath it all, the warp. Not a storm, not a roar, not yet. Just a pressure, a thin bulge in the fabric of reality, like a blister forming under skin. He tastes it at the back of his throat. It tastes like old copper and cold water and grief. There's a ritual, he says. His voice is hoarse. He didn't notice when he stopped sleeping. It's ahead, deep, close to the reactor veins. They're trying to open something. The colonel grimaces. He hates the word ritual. It means things he can't shoot. Can you stop it? He asks. The Psyker does not answer immediately. He could lie. It would be easy. Say yes, say of course, say by the Emperor's will. Let the officers believe this can still end cleanly. Instead, he tells the truth. No, not alone. The handler stiffens behind him. He doesn't like that answer. The colonel scowls. Then what can you do? The Psyker opens his eyes. He's so tired. I can die near it, he says quietly, and hope that's enough. They go anyway, of course. This is the Imperium. If the choice is between impossible and unthinkable, they march toward impossible and call it valor. They descend, down past broken habs and flooded tunnels, past gangs that flee at the sight of laser guns, past old shrine rooms stripped of icons, past manufactoria whose machines are now altars to things with too many teeth. The deeper they go, the worse the air gets. It feels too thick and too thin at the same time. The Psyker hears the ritual long before they see it, not with his ears, with his mind, chanting, not in low Gothic, not even in dark tongue, in an older language, emotion, hatred as syllables, despair as punctuation, envy, regret, hunger, all braided together into a rope of sound wrapped around something sharp. The warp presses harder. The back of his eyes ache. His teeth feel loose. His thoughts keep trying to go somewhere else. He stumbles. His handler grips his arm, fingers digging in. Stay with me, subject, the handler snarls under his breath. Do not drift. I'm here, the Psyker whispers. I'm here. For now. The ritual chamber used to be a coolant exchange hall. Once, it was full of pipes and cisterns and ticking valves. Now those pipes are torn open, bleeding steam and chemicals into the air. The cistern rims are crowded with chanting silhouettes. The valves have been twisted into symbols no human hand should know how to make. The center of the chamber is wrong. Not empty, not full, just wrong. Like a cut in the world that hasn't finished opening. Light doesn't behave properly around it. Sound bends. The familiar rules of here and there start to feel like suggestions. The rebels, cultists now, turn as the guard enters. Their faces are painted with their own blood. Their mouths move faster as they see the uniforms. Not in fear, in excitement. They want witnesses. They want an audience for the birth of their ruin. The colonel raises his power sword. Fire! Laser guns bark. Autoguns counter. Men die. The Psyker does not fire. He can't even raise a hand. He is staring at the wound in the air. He can feel something on the other side. Not fully formed. Not here yet. But aware. And hungry. Every bullet, every scream, every drop of blood on the floor is making it stronger. The handler grabs his shoulder again. Now would be a good time, Witch. The Psyker swallows. He knows what they want. They want fire, lightning, invisible walls, psychic force slamming cultists into steel until they break. He can do that. He has done that. But it won't be enough. The wound in the air is growing, not in size, in depth. He feels its attention begin to slide sideways toward him. It recognizes him, not as a person, as an opening. The warp knows its own. He has a choice, not a real one. Real choices require alternatives, but he still calls it a choice, because it makes what happens next easier to accept. He can hold back, be cautious, use just enough power to help the guard win the gunfight. then hope the null collars and sisters and orbital bombardments can contain whatever seeps into the world afterward. It will not work. He knows that, but he could pretend. Or he can open. Not a careful opening, not the controlled channeling that his instructors drilled into him under pain and threat. A real opening, a wound for a wound. He knows what will happen if he does. He has seen it in others. He has watched fellow Psykers go too far, felt their minds rupture like overloaded capacitors, smelled their burning flesh, listened to the wet pop of their souls being dragged sideways. He knows. He takes a breath and opens. For one heartbeat, he is infinite. He feels the entire battlefield at once. The panic of a teenager in guard fatigues who misses home and will be dead in 16 seconds. The cold resolve of the handler with his finger already tightening on the trigger because he knows what this kind of surge means. The ecstatic delirium of the cult leader, exultant that the Imperium itself has brought a living conduit to crown their ritual. The distant icy interest of something in the warp. He feels the Astronomicon blazing far above. He feels the Titan cores thrumming on other continents. He feels the unnatural stillness of the Silent Sisters waiting light years away. He feels too much, far too much. The wound in the middle of the chamber flares, not in light, but in awareness. It recognizes him fully now. For a moment, it tries to reach through him, through his body, through his trauma, through the raw, tender nerve of his life. He does the only thing he can. He pushes back, not with strength. He has none left. With meaning. He remembers the litany of control. He remembers the pain thrones. He remembers the null house. He remembers the black ship. He remembers his mother's scream when they took him. He remembers his own first prayer, begged out through bleeding teeth. Please don't let me hurt anyone. He shoves that memory into the breach like a wedge. The warp hits it, and for one impossible second, it folds. The wound in the air shrieks soundlessly. The chanting turns to choking. The cultists collapse as if their strings were cut. The room vibrates. Every light explodes. Every gun jams. Every mine falls. Our Psyker holds. He feels pieces of himself tearing away, pulled into the wound instead of what waits behind it. His fear, his grief, his loneliness, his resentment, his exhausted longing for rest. The warp takes all of it, dragged out of him like organs with no anesthetic. It hurts. It hurts so much he forgets how to scream. Then, suddenly, silence. The pressure vanishes. The wound closes. Not cleanly, never cleanly, but enough. The danger is over. The ritual is broken. The thing behind it turns away, uninterested now. Not enough fun left here. He collapses. He doesn't fall the way a man falls. He drops like a puppet cut from its strings. The handler is at his side instantly, hands on his shoulders, fingers on his pulse. Subject, respond. Theta 19, respond. Speak. The Psyker tries. No sound comes. His throat works. His lungs pull. His tongue moves, but there is nothing behind them. He realizes distantly. He left his voice in the wound. The handler looks into his eyes. He's seen dead men before. He knows what an empty stare looks like. This isn't that. The eyes move. The pupils constrict. He tracks motion. But there's something missing. Emotion, anger, panic, anything. Can you hear me? The handler asks. The Psyker blinks once. Slowly. He hears. He cannot answer. Because something else is missing too. Fear. He tries to reach for it. That familiar tightness in his chest that has been with him every moment of his life. Nothing. He reaches for grief, for shame, for hope. Nothing. Inside his own head, his thoughts echo oddly, like someone shouting across an empty room. The warp is quiet, not because the threat is gone, because the part of him that could feel it is gone. He realizes, with a clarity sharper than any pain, to hold that breach, he didn't just give up his power, he gave up himself. Not to a demon, not to corruption, to the effort of saving everyone else. He has not become a monster, he has become a hollow. The handler exhales slowly, his shoulders sag in relief. He's alive, he reports to the colonel. Burnout, but stable. He did it. The colonel nods once. Good. Put him back in rotation once he can stand. The handler hesitates. Sir, I don't know if he'll ever... Then send a request for a replacement, the colonel snaps. We still need a psyker. He turns away. There are bodies to count, reports to file, commends to write, blame to assign. The handler looks down at the empty-eyed psyker on the floor. He sees nothing looking back. For the first time, he feels something like pity. Not much, but a flicker. You did well, he says quietly. He knows the psyker can hear him, if not with ears, with something. No demon, no breach, no execution order. That's more than most get. The psyker looks at him. There is a twitch at the corner of his mouth. Almost a smile, almost a sob. Nothing reaches the surface. Inside, where no one can see, a thought forms. It is simple, small, very quiet. Please, let this count as my death. But it will not. He will live. He will walk. He will obey. He will sit in cells and stand on battlefields and nod when spoken to. Because no one in the Imperium believes that losing your soul counts as dying. Not officially. There is another kind of horror that comes with being born a psyker. Not the horror of pain, not the horror of fear, not the horror of death, the horror of survival, of surviving so completely broken that you no longer recognize yourself, and watching everyone around you call it victory. In the end, the story of a psyker is not a story about power. It is a story about use. How much use can be extracted from a mind before it breaks? How much terror can be repurposed into fuel? How many screams can be turned into guidance? How many lives can be converted into the Emperor protects? Everything else, the demons, the rituals, the training, the black ships, the liturgies, is just infrastructure around that central fact. You were never meant to survive as a psyker. Not for long, not whole, not truly. That is the part people don't say out loud. If you were born in the Imperium, and you were unlucky enough to be born like this, what would happen? You know the steps now. First, there would be the childhood, the broken toys, the dead pets, the nightmares that didn't end at dawn, the whispers behind the walls, the sick, gnawing certainty that you are wrong inside. Then the neighbors would whisper, the priest would visit, the report would be filed, the black ships would come, you would be taken, branded, sorted, graded like livestock. If you were weak, you would die quickly. If you were too strong, you would die more slowly. If you were just right, strong enough to be useful, weak enough to be controlled, you would live long enough to understand what you are. You would be taught not to trust your own mind. You would be punished for feeling. You would be praised for numbness. You would be rewarded for silence. You would be conditioned to believe that the best thing you can ever do is die at the right moment for someone else's survival. And if you're very unlucky, you might not even get that. You might live just long enough to burn out quietly, alone, in a dark room on a forgotten ship, while someone in another sector calls your life a rounding error. This is the horror of being born a psyker. Not just that you will suffer, not just that you will die, but that your suffering and death are already accounted for in someone's ledger. You are not a tragedy, you are a calculation. It would be easy now to say, they are monsters. They are dangerous. They are better off dead. The Imperium says all of that and more. But here is the last truth, the one even the Inquisition doesn't like whispered. Psykers are not monsters. They are what happens when a galaxy is so loud with pain that reality itself starts to scream. Every atrocity, every war, every genocide, every betrayal, every desperate prayer unanswered, all of it spills into the warp. The warp does not forget. The warp does not heal. It recycles. It takes the worst things a sentient mind can feel and turns them into storms. Those storms crackle inside the souls of the unlucky, the gifted, the born wrong. Those children never had a chance. They did not ask to hear voices. They did not ask to see beyond the veil. They did not ask to glow in the dark where predators hunt by light. The galaxy did this to them, and then punished them for existing. So when someone in the Imperium says, Psykers are the Emperor's cattle, they mean, these lives exist to be spent, to be bred, harvested, shipped, burned, forgotten. But there is another way to hear that sentence. Cattle are not evil. Cattle are not guilty. Cattle are not collaborators. Cattle are victims. Creatures raised in a system that only ever intended one thing for them. You wouldn't survive as a Psyker, not because you're weak, not because you lack courage, not because you're soft. You wouldn't survive because no one is meant to. Not in a galaxy like this, not in a reality that feeds on fear, not in an Imperium that has decided some souls are more valuable as fuel than as people. And if, somehow, you did survive, if you endured the black ships and the throne and the training and the battles and the whispers, you would not walk away a hero. You would walk away hollow. And the worst part? The galaxy would call that a success. In a kinder universe, Psyker children would be protected, guided, taught gently, shielded from the Imperium until they were strong enough to face it. In a kinder universe, their gifts would be gifts, not sentences. But this is not a kinder universe. This is Warhammer 40,000. In this universe, if you are born a Psyker, you are born with an expiration date stamped in a language only the warp understands. You are born already owned, already claimed by the Imperium, by the warp, by both. And everyone else? They look at you and call it necessary. That is the final horror of being born a Psyker. Not that you will suffer, not that you will die, but that when you do, the galaxy will keep turning, the Astronomicon will keep burning, the ships will keep sailing, the prayers will keep rising, and almost no one will remember that you were ever anything but fuel.